Welcome to a Drop Tent Media Production.
The Porcupine with Adam Nutter.
Yo, what's up? Nice 3-week break, but we're back. It's fucking busy. I don't know what to tell you guys. I am Adam Nutter. How's it going? You guys know this is Porcupine. Yay. Fun episode tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a difference. We're going to do a little bit of a ideological discussion between the Libertarian Party and the Constitutionalist Party. Before we get into that, just again, follow me at Adam Nutter on Instagram, at Tattooed Comic on Twitter. I'm on the road this Saturday, January 21st. Emmaus Theater. I'm judging a roast battle, and I think I'm doing like a set afterwards, which should be a good time at the Emmaus Theater in Emmaus, Pennsylvania, right under Allentown. The 28th, Morrisville, Pennsylvania, Ashland Distillery, coming out to that. February 16th, Camden Theater. I'll be there. February 17th, back at the Emmaus Theater doing a different gig. March 3rd, LPPA convention in Reading, Pennsylvania. Then I'm on the road with Robbie Bernstein, I think in Colorado and stuff. So a lot of shit coming up. It's going to be fun. All right. It's enough of me. Oh, go check out the Cult of Us podcast I do with the great Neil Wood. Of course, youtube.com/Cult of Us, all that stuff. Okay, great. Oh, my guest today are, you guys know him. You guys love him. He's been on the show 1,000 times. From the Libertarian Review podcast, give it up for my man, Mr. Tyler Janke.
1,000 times and you didn't get the name right.
No, I say it on purpose now. Now it's on purpose. Now it's just a joke on purpose. But it's Janke. Sorry. That's an inside joke for me.
It's Libertarian Podcast Review. Let's get that part.
What did I say? Party review?
I don't remember. No, but I'm glad to be on here to talk about Steven Crowder and the contract for another 2 hours.
Yeah. That wasn't fascinating news for you or podcasting? Listen to Tim Pool talk about Steven Crowder for 2.5 hours, bro?
Disappointed with our boys. They had a chance, and the topic was really the worst you can
Dude,
imagine,
I am so mad. I watched like 2 minutes of this. I was like, yo, these are my boys, but this is rough. Tim Pool is the worst. Yeah. And of course, from the Liberty Lighthouse radio show, everybody. That's right, radio show, not a podcast. Give it from the Constitutionalist Party. Give it up for Peter Serefine, everybody. Serefine. Sorry. I'm bad with names. Serefine. Bad with names. You know, I asked you before. Guys, this is going to be fun. So I was on Peter's radio show, Liberty Lighthouse, talking a little bit about libertarianism and the differences between that and I guess like conservative or in Peter's case, the Constitutionalist Party, because he is I believe, a card-carrying member of the Constitutionalist Party.
I am a card-carrying member of the Constitution Party.
And what we determined, or what we found out, was we were pretty much aligned on most stuff. Peter wasn't aware of the Mises caucus and the whole takeover Reno thing. Like, he wasn't aware of all that. So he was kind of coming at me with a pre-woke planks of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah. The woke stuff was terrible.
Yeah. So he had like a list ready to go for me. I was like, wait, we changed it. And he's like, oh, damn it. So I was trying to
in the middle of a live show. No,
So I was explaining like all the like abortion stuff has kind of changed, and like the live your life stuff has kind of changed and all that stuff. So that was, I know, I guess a problem you have with the Libertarian Party, Peter. I mean, if you want to describe it yourself more, not problem, but you know.
I never had a problem with anything. You can believe what you want.
Yeah.
My feeling up until now, and you might change my mind tonight, my feeling up until learning about the party platform change was that a vast majority of those that are in the Libertarian Party would probably fit better in the Constitution Party. But now that you got all that woke stuff out of your party platform, okay, we should work together on some stuff. Like,
so what was your issue? Just all the woke stuff? That was pretty much it.
Pretty much it.
Yeah. We did ditch it. Tyler,
it's still there.
Yeah, but not like it used to be. It's more just loosely like do you.
There's an internal battle over that exact stuff now, which I think is great, rather than just like, oh, it permeates and you just kind of deal with it. I did not. So Peter, I have a lot in common with probably with you. More conservative. I knew about the Constitutionalist Party at Ten Credo. I lived out in Colorado at the time. He ended up going out there, I think, on your guys' ticket for a while. So I definitely had a connection and I knew about this stuff. But then I went over. I didn't want the Libertarian Party, and then there was it was actually Austin Peterson when he ran, and he gave a different view of abortion defending it from the non-aggression principle aspect. And I was like, oh, now I could maybe start getting on board. And, a lot of things changed. Dave Smith, the Mises Caucus, really put a different perspective. And, one thing that's crazy about Libertarian, you can argue almost everything from, this property rights and non-aggression principle. So it's good to actually push back and argue those things from a principled point of view, actually. So,
yeah, my stance is why I chose the Constitution Party. I really believe that the U.S. Constitution was, it established probably the closest thing to perfect government that's ever been on earth. And I think all of our problems in the United States started about 120 years ago when we had a government that started ignoring the U.S. Constitution. And it's stepping beyond all of its constraints and restrictions. And that's all of our problem. And if we could actually find a way to restrict it back to the 30 or so enumerated powers, and only the 30 or so enumerated powers, that we'd all be, fine. I mean, prior to, I always use 1913 as the jumping off point of when our government went to hell. Prior to 1913, most people weren't aware of their federal government at all. Like, they probably knew who the president was, and that was about it, because it wasn't in their daily lives. But then in 1913, you got the creation of the Federal Reserve, the
Income tax,
right? Yeah. The codification of income tax in a constitutional amendment, because even prior to that, income tax had been attempted like 3 times, and the Supreme Court kept throwing it out as, it's not in the Constitution. You can't do this. So they made a constitutional amendment.
Mm-hmm.
What I say? Income tax. Oh, and I think the 17th Amendment, which changed how senators get their jobs, was a dramatic blow to the balance of powers that kept the federal government in check. The 17th Amendment changed U.S. senators. They used to be appointed by the state legislatures. So the senators reported back to the 100 or so members of your state house, not all of the people of the state. So now the senators are basically glorified members of the House of Representatives. And the state government lost all power to push back when the federal government starts crossing the line.
Right. Okay. So, and this is where you and I started disagreeing on your show, because I understand your points. Just like, if you just stick to the 30 original things and to keep the government in check, right? The problem is it never happens, right? Like you just said, they added an amendment. That's it. That's all they have to do. They go, oh, well, we're just going to write it into law now, and now it is part of the Constitution. Look at that, and now we're just sitting here going, oh, okay. Yeah.
Or the Supreme Court, which once kept pushing back and saying, the income tax is not constitutional. Suddenly it becomes constitutional. So you've got those guys. I would actually say that the before 1913, the government was pretty heavy in your life, like in the 1860s. There was a lot of, you probably knew what was going on. The federal government was definitely opposed, and
Civil War?
that was a little unconstitutional. I think you can make some arguments.
Oh yeah, I mean, Lincoln was the president to this day that's had the most books written about him, and he definitely did a lot of unconstitutional things. But a lot of people do a lot of things that are wrong during war. Where I think Lincoln probably deserves some credit is when the war was over, he gave it all back. He let go of all of those things that he did extra constitutionally. It takes a pretty big man to do that. You're right. During war, of course, everybody knows what the government's doing. But aside from war, especially internal civil war, I don't think the average person really knew much about their federal government prior to that.
You're definitely right about the progressive era basically coming along, and Woodrow Wilson and just overdoing the states and everybody. Yes, very much involved. And to the point where, I mean, we had, that led to new cases coming up in the early 20s and 30s that have changed everything, with the just over involvement in our lives to an extent. How do you feel about that? When you say you want to push back to like the 30 or so amendments, or scale it way back, at what point, what is your biggest contention with what we have going on right now?
Just the constant overreach. I mean, one thing, there's so many ways to argue this, but one is the Bible. If you believe in God, the Bible, 10% in tithe to your church. Well, the government takes like 50%. Yeah. If 10% is enough for God, 10% should be enough for government. So that's one. If you look at those 30 to 36 powers listed in the U.S. Constitution for the federal government, well, then why in the hell do we have 440 federal departments, agencies, and offices? If there's only 30 powers, there shouldn't be any more than 30 offices, right? I mean, isn't logic say, like, why do you have so many offices? The level of redundancy not only between federal agencies, but between the federal government and the state governments. Like, every state has an OSHA, an occupational safety and health department, whatever they call it. Every state has one. But then we also have one at the federal government. And oh, by the way, there's another department in the federal government that has almost exactly the same mission statement as OSHA. So why are all of these things ridiculous redundance, ridiculous waste of money?
The administration state is
completely an administrative state.
Yeah, and but some of that is done through they have a new department. Maybe there's some scrutiny about it, and the Supreme Court says it's constitutional. So how do you push back? And I'm sorry, Adam, I don't mean to be asking.
No. We've already had kind of this conversation, so that's why I brought you on to different light.
No, that's so. How do you, and this is something I try to deal with because we're in the real world. I'm more like an Ancapistan type of, or an anarcho-capitalist, which would like to
we
do away with
this conversation. Yeah,
which would like to do away with the government, of course, but we're not going to get there. So I think until we get to a place where that is going to happen, Peter and I and Adam could walk hand in hand on a lot of aspects of where we're headed. I don't know. Did I have a question?
We both want to shrink. It's just
at
some point I want shrinking to stop, and you all want it to continue to shrink.
Kind of, yeah. Because your argument to me on your program was, I was like, well, we could privatize things, and you're like, well, that's what a government is, and I was like, well, no.
You were describing a democracy. You vote on the laws, and then you vote to hire a private organization to. That's democracy,
right? But it's not a government, though. You could have democracy and not a government. You could still be democratic and not have a governing body over a group of people, though.
If a group of people is voting, it's still government.
What way were you talking about voting?
Private police department.
I mean, I don't personally. I'd just say that's up for hire, and the more competition you have, the better.
That's what I was saying.
I agree with that part of it. But how do you so you've got a private police department that's enforcing laws. Where did the laws come from?
Well,
we voted on them.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say about voted on. It's common law. How that evolves is through common law, which is you take someone who's an authority of some sort. And look, we're not against hierarchy at all. I mean, you're going to have some sort of structure. Peter, I will say this. And this is where we always go to the most difficult and the most extreme kind of argument to work there. Yeah. This is what's great about technology and the fact that the free market does enable ideas and possible outcomes that we are not there. And so I understand you go to the minute one where I don't have an answer for that. And I think we could work it out as a individuals and communities. But once again, if we push our way back before we even get to that kind of space, there's so much more we can work on. I just think, you tell me what is something that the government does that you you think they do better than the private?
Nothing. There's absolutely nothing that the government does effectively or efficiently.
Well, they kill. They're really good at killing.
Yeah,
Really good at killing.
Right.
and wasting money.
So with that in mind, there's always, okay, well, if that's the case, then there's probably something. And look, this does not mean a utopia. There's going to be massive problems,
Right.
No matter where you
There's
go.
corruption
There's
no
gonna
matter
be
what.
Yes.
We're human
exactly.
beings. We're going to be corrupt.
I think there's easier or better. I mean, a prime example, you have all this stuff that's happening with the Twitter files, and you have the government being involved, and they're suppressing people, and they're, stomping all over their First Amendment rights. What is the redress?
Well, I mean, look at, not to ignore your question, but going back to the COVID thing.
Yeah.
The lockdowns, like first, second, fourth, and Seventh Amendments. I think I forget. There was like a list. You could check
Well,
them
there was
off.
a third there as well. For
I
a
think it's
while.
the top 5. They just
It's like, oh, we'll just take this half and throw it away. That doesn't matter.
On that point, they actually took at one point, I think it was in New York, they put up the military or so like the National Guard in hotels. And so the Third Amendment was literally in there as well.
It depends. Were the hotels doing it voluntarily and being paid for it, or were they saying, put up our beds?
Well, that's but that's the problem is with that is like, right, volunteer. Just like how technically the government didn't force you to get a shot. They just forced companies to force you to get a shot to work. Yeah. That's their workaround. They'll never do that because they know it's fascism.
Peter, how
they know
dare
that.
you step on my joke about the Third Amendment?
I forgot I'm working with comedians.
Well,
No,
Tyler's a
I'm not.
lawyer.
But
Same thing.
Fair.
The funny thing, if you really look at the government didn't force anybody to get the vaccine, so they tried to push it out and say that all executive branch employees have to get it. I'm a mail carrier. The United States Postal Service is part of the executive branch, but the United States Postal Service said, "Fuck you, we ain't doing that," and we never got mandated because we know. I mean, we're already drastically short-staffed. We're always short-staffed. The job freaking sucks.
Yeah.
Our turnover rate is ridiculous. And if you do something like that, you're going to lose so many more people. They're like, we're not doing that. And I might say the mail is like the one thing that the government might do better than the private sector.
Doubt it. I mean, look at UPS and FedEx and stuff. They're pretty efficient. DHL, all those companies are way more efficient
and they're all
than.
twice as expensive.
Yeah, but I'd rather pay for efficiency than not efficiency.
But the funny thing is, if you get Congress out of the way and you let okay, I don't know if you know this or not, but if the post office wants to raise the price of a stamp, they have to go to this, I forget what it's called, but there's a governing body in Congress.
Okay.
And get their permission, which then has to go in front of, all of Congress. And even if they get their permission, they're only allowed to increase the price of the stamp up to and including the cost of inflation since the last increase. Okay. We have the world's largest fleet of vehicles that are now 35 years old. The youngest of them are now 35 years old. And you won't let us raise the cost of a stamp a nickel to replace our fleet? But you're going to mandate from the White House that we switch over to electric vehicles. Like, it's actually the Congress getting involved in the relatively independent government agency that's screwing with that relatively independent government agency.
Yeah, it's quasi, right? Like,
yeah. I'm a federal employee. We are a executive branch department, but we don't get tax money. Well, until COVID, we don't get tax money. We're funded by the cost of postage.
Oh, so, that was my question. So you guys are completely funded just by people using the mail,
supposedly, but
right.
But then you get like Congress coming in and mandating that the United States Postal Service pre-fund retiree medical care for like the next 50 years, being the only entity anywhere on the planet being forced to do that. So then we look like we're losing $1 billion a year, and politicians are like, "Oh, the post office is losing so much money. We should just privatize it." We're losing money because you're making us do stuff that you're not making anybody else do.
Well, yeah. Well, this does go back into the greater argument of like government interferes and gets things muddied up, sure.
Right.
But would the post office exist without federal government? Is my question. Even if the federal government turned around tomorrow and said, "You guys are on your own. Good luck,"
I think we'd be better.
would people still use that, or would people just be like, "Well, I'm definitely going to use some other service now"? I mean, I don't know.
The Lysander Spooner mail service. It's like price fixing with the stamps. I mean, they're or price controls, I guess, in a sense. They're not allowing the free market to dictate, because it never goes down.
Right.
And I mean,
it did once that I can recall. Once we got a temporary price increase when Obama was president, and the gas went up so high that we got like a gas tax increase basically, but it did expire and it went down.
Oh, there you go.
But it still seems to me like your overall argument for government is kind of you being like, well, if government didn't get in the way of the post office, it would work. We're like, yeah, we know. That's what we keep saying.
Right. What I'm trying to say is that the post office is one of the few things that the government probably does.
Right, but you're telling me the government actually muddies it up more.
Oh yeah, Congress gets involved. Like
right.
If they were allowed to be more autonomous, they would do better.
But
like you and I said on my show, like defense of the nation is probably the number one priority of a federal government, because even if we in the United States were able to shrink our federal government down to the smallest possible footprint, so small that even you guys were happy with it, you still need the defense from the other tyrants in the world. Because even if you create the perfect, what'd you call it?
Utopia.
It's not a utopia.
Not utopia. The was it anarcho-capitalist?
Society. Yeah.
Even if you create the perfect anarcho-capitalist society, you still need defense from the Stalins and the Hitlers and the Maos and the whoever in other countries.
Right. No, but I think what most people would say is the federal government's true job really only should be that is protection of our borders. But like,
well, I think whenever I interview a politician, the first question I ask them is, "What do you feel the role of government is?" And as far as I'm concerned, there's only one proper answer if you're an American citizen, and that is the quote from the Declaration of Independence: to preserve these rights, governments are instituted among men. Thomas Jefferson spells out, hey, you're human, and therefore you have these unalienable rights that came from God, and then we create governments to protect these rights. And if you want my vote, then you have to be able to tell me that's why you're doing this, and that's the purpose of government. Like you said earlier, humans are evil. We're corrupt, corruptible, rude, bad-tempered, whatever. Citizen A is going to find a way to take advantage of citizen B. Government's job, theoretically, according to the Declaration of Independence and our founding fathers, is to limit that as much as possible.
Right, but as we already also established, it's like, as we said, people are corrupt. It doesn't matter. Private government is going to be corrupted. Again, this is why I always say the difference between the private thing and the government thing is the government thing, when people are corrupt and we go, hey, you're being corrupt, they go, yeah, right, do something. And we just go, we can't. And they go, yeah, you're right. At least private, there are more, again, we had this argument already, not argument, this is a discussion already, but I still feel like there's more avenues to go down, at least in a private enterprise, to get rid of something or change something than it would be a government enterprise, because there's no incentive to do better.
But we, the people, have to create that incentive.
Right, but they won't allow us to. That's the problem.
No. All of these elected jobs, all of them, every elected job in the country has a recall or impeachment process. We have to pay more attention, and I think that's how we got where we are today. For the last 125 years, our citizens weren't paying attention and allowed the government to grow to the out of control monster that it is now. If we
I got a question on that.
Yeah.
You said earlier, up until 120 years ago, no one was caring about the federal government, and that seemed to be a good thing. Now you're saying we've focused too much on it. Okay, go ahead. I just want clarity on that.
I understand that, and that's a great way to put it out. But it again, human nature. Government's not on my back. They're not in my life. I don't care. I'm not paying attention. And then government says, "Oh, they're not paying attention," and grows to the monster that it is today.
Gotcha.
It's our own apathy, our own. I always say fat and lazy. We Americans are fat and lazy. We haven't had to struggle for anything in decades. If you want something, you walk to the store and you get it, or you pick up your phone and order it on Amazon. It's right there. You don't have to do anything. And we've ignored the government that in the beginning was good, and then it was not so good, and then it got bigger and more corrupt and bigger and more corrupt and kept doing it. And now they're in every aspect of our lives. They're horribly corrupt, and they clearly don't care about our rights or the Constitution anymore. Hell, the guy in the White House now stood at a podium and said, well, all of my constitutional experts tell me that we can't use the CDC to extend the eviction moratorium, but we're going to do it anyway. That's clearly impeachable. He has an oath to support and defend the Constitution. He stood at a podium and said, I know this is unconstitutional, but I'm going to do it anyway.
But
Right.
it gets
Why
worse.
why hasn't he been impeached yet?
Well, it gets worse because remember, was it that one or the OSHA? I think it was the CDC one you're actually speaking of. They had the Supreme Court heard it and they said, "Oh, you're right. It's not constitutional, but it's going to expire, so we're just going to let this go." And then what does he do? He does it again.
Yep.
So you're right. He's not impeached. I mean, you're not going to defend the Republicans, obviously.
Oh God, no!
Okay. We'll rip on them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, have to. I mean, obviously the weakest during COVID ever. I mean, absolute cowards. They're at least half the reason why we're in the position we are in the first place.
Right.
If four of them had the balls to snap and be like, actually, we're not going to shut down. Actually, we're not going to force this. We wouldn't be where we are. But the fact they all went, okay, let's give money to Ukraine also when that comes around in 4 years.
The Ukraine, which for 30 years our government has been telling us we have absolutely no strategic or economic interest in Ukraine at all. But now all of a sudden we've got to give them, was it $100 billion?
$100 billion and ticking.
Right. And speaking of which, when Vladimir Zelensky was named Time Magazine's Person of the
He's a
Year,
hero, though,
yeah,
You gotta give heroes that reward.
I took that magazine cover and put it next to the magazine cover of 1938's Time Magazine name. You know who that is?
Yep.
Hitler, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Adolf.
I put the two of them side by side, and I posted it on all of my social media platforms with the caption, "Does anybody else see the similarities?"
Yeah.
That video on TikTok was struck down before it was seen by anyone.
Wow.
And I hit the appeal button. And almost immediately, the appeal came back denied. I didn't say anything. It was captions only.
Yeah, I know Time likes to say, it's not about, we're not like recognizing these people. I'm like, yeah, but you are.
No, it's not about good or evil. It's about influence.
Right. It's like, no, but if you put someone on a major cover for a major magazine, you're platforming that person in a positive light, no matter what you say.
When Peter's stuff gets struck down, it's obvious they're lifting him up, right? Otherwise, you're like, oh yeah, obviously two bad guys. It's fine, but you can't. Yeah, that's. What are you gonna do? TikTok. Chinese didn't like that meme, I guess.
Right, and that's what I don't get. You would think that the Chinese people that run TikTok would want as much dissension within the United States as possible. Why do they keep striking down my conservative stuff?
Because it doesn't go along with the agenda, I think. I think we all know that very clear. I mean, Twitter files pretty much said what we all knew anyway.
So the Chinese are part of the World Economic Forum, global WHO, take over the world, everything agenda.
There's Chinese police departments in New York City and Europe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But why is that not a bigger deal? I don't know. You tell me.
I never realized that the Chinese were so involved with. Yes, we all know. I mean, they've got a plan, a published plan. They want to take over the world. I didn't realize that they were so in tune with the other groups that want to take over the world too.
I think
maybe it's that they want to drive down American culture so that we are able to be subverted and taken over.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why they struck down your video.
Maybe.
I mean, there's definitely a cultural war happening in America right now. That's pretty obvious. I mean, it's, hence the Libertarian Party, us trying to, I mean, listen, we still are libertarians, so we could only say and do so much with our ideology that reflects it. Especially with the plank stuff, like Tyler said, like some of the woke stuff still, like it is, but not like how it was. Like that woke shit was very, like what was it? We condemn bigotry as irrational and repugnant.
Yeah.
Like who's that for? You know what I'm saying? Like who's that for though? Like that's gone, but it's still there is still stuff of like be who you are, just don't let the government interfere with you and stuff like that, which I guess could be wokey, I guess, because they're not like denouncing.
I don't know.
That lifestyle.
Peter, tell us what else you have against the libertarians.
No, it's really it. Like I said, I'd say that 90% we agree, and I like what I brought up with Adam on the show was the spreadsheet that compared Constitution Party to Libertarian Party, and there were like I can't remember the exact number. It was like 3 to 5 bullet points where we didn't agree. Everything else were perfect. But all of those 3 to 5 that where we didn't agree have been at least tamed down on the Libertarian Party. I mean, the Constitutionalist Party, every point of the party platform points to the Constitution, the Declaration, or the Bible, or a combination of those three. So on the idea of abortion, Constitution Party is strictly no, don't ever, it's murder, can't do it, can't sanction it. Okay. I was always a go along to get along guy on that route. And when we had a line, when it was the 22 or 25 weeks, depending on what state you were in, I was like, I don't agree with abortion, but okay. That's what society has agreed to. I got involved in politics when New York and Virginia said, nope, you can murder the baby even after it's born.
Yeah.
That's when I started getting involved in politics because I thought, okay, people are gone crazy.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess, Tyler, for us, that abortion plank is technically like in the economic liberty part under healthcare, but like it doesn't really mention abortion. It just, like I said, it says we favor a free market healthcare system. Medical facilities, medical providers, and medical products, including drugs, must be freely available in the marketplace without government restrictions or licenses. We recognize the freedom of individuals to determine the level of health insurance they want, if any, the level of health care they want, the care providers they want, the medicines and treatments they will use, and all other aspects of their medical care, including end-of-life decisions. People should be free to purchase health insurances across state lines. We oppose governments either mandating or restricting voluntary access to medical treatments or procedures, including vaccines. That's right. It. We're never going to come out and say no because...
I'm fine with all of that, and the end-of-life decisions is fine as far as it's your own life.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
There was an overt abortion plank in there that got removed, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was clearly, it's none of your damn business. We can kill a baby whenever we want. Like, it was way. That was,
and I know that really ruffled a lot of feathers, and I'm much more feel better about that. I mean, for me, I was like, I'm joining the party. That's just one part I don't agree with.
Right.
I'm, the full on abortion stuff. So I know people don't like it now, but I think it leaves it open to some agreement or like disagreement, and you can still have this be your party. I mean, for us, it's a self-ownership thing. And then there's so many different people that have tried to jump around. I don't know if you've ever heard of these, the eviction, talking about treating it kind of like someone you invite into your home and that you have the ability to evict them. It's some other philosophies. They don't work out as well either. And so it's such a difficult part. And if you think it's, murder, you're going to be on one side. And then look, me growing up, I was probably similar to what you just described, Peter, which is I didn't really have a stance on it. It was just, I'm religious. Our church didn't really do anything about it. They just kind of ignored everything. And so it was just something I never thought about, but I always got creeped out of the people that were pro to the point where they were going to preach it in the streets. That was always creepy to me. Right. And so you're like, well, I don't know how. It's not a VW bug when it comes out. It's definitely a child. There's no way that it's not. So it's weird. So yeah, I feel very good about the like I said, Austin Peterson started talking about it like, well, this is a person that's growing in there. They have rights. You can't aggress upon them. And for me, you can take this eviction idea, which is you invite someone into your house, which is you get pregnant, you had sex, but that person is in there for a 9-month lease. You can't just evict them. You know what that property right is that they have now.
That's a good argument. I like that.
Yeah. So and by the way, I heard Walter Block. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a very famous libertarian guy. He had this whole idea, and then I started to push back. I started to think about this from my angle of the lease, and then I'm like, oh, I've got this great thing to combat. And then I looked it up, and some other one guy had gone through pages and pages of literature saying the same thing. So I'm not original. That's all.
No, but you are, because you thought of it. It's not like you saw that. It was an original thought to you.
That's like a college kid where the first time they think of something, they think it's the first time anyone's ever thought about it. And that's just pathetic.
No, for sure. I do it all the time. But it's still original to you, though. Like, it's not.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Ken Krawchuk.
Oh, I love Ken. I personally know Ken.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In fact, Ken just emailed me literally to go speak at the Montgomery County Libertarian Party meeting. But like, Ken's a really, really knowledgeable libertarian.
I had Ken on the show for an hour.
Oh fuck! And, I love
Ken. I believe it's my most downloaded episode.
That makes sense. Actually, Ken blew me off on my own show, and we're friends. like a year ago, he's supposed to come on. He never did. Yeah, Ken is a really smart guy. He really knows his procedure law and stuff for party stuff. He knows I can't
remember the name. What was the book he wrote that was like it was Ayn Rand's like the follow up after Atlas Shrugged.
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh, Atlas Snubbed. That was
that sounds like a Ken Krawchuk title. Honestly, it sounds like yeah.
You should get that.
Yeah. No, Ken's a good dude. I'm glad you had Ken on. Yeah, Ken's awesome.
I got to ask Peter, what do you think of Ayn Rand?
I don't know. I never read it.
Okay.
I can't.
I don't like her either.
Well, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like libertarians," and then they point to her, and that's not really what it is.
No, it's not that I don't like libertarians at all. For one thing,
no, I'm just saying.
I got to say one thing. I hate the fact that language got changed so much that you have to be called libertarians and not liberals. Yeah. Which in the rest of the world, that's what liberal means. The liberty focused. I mean,
it's true. In fact, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't like libertarianism like subverted by commies at one point or something? Like,
well, I mean, Peter's obviously thought it was when he talked to you. He's
yeah, true. But didn't they try to steal that word at one point and try to use like libertarianism as like a commie thing? And then we're like, nah.
Probably so. I know that the liberal, that was the definite change that I don't know when that happened, but they definitely, it was they wanted to make. Anyway, the progressives went down that route. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that history. I just have heard it years ago.
They somehow absconded our word.
Yeah.
Because if you read like old stuff, like most of the founding fathers were liberals. And if you look in any other country in the world, the word liberal refers to people like us who want to fight for liberty. But now here in this country, it means lefty nut job. I don't know how that happened. So I want to say that. I agree with the Libertarian Party, like I said from the beginning. I agree with you with almost everything. It's just I believe that a form of government is necessary and that the U.S. Constitution is the best government that's ever been made by man.
Yeah,
we just stop paying attention to it.
The U.S. Constitution is that. It's just still, it all goes back to the same thing of like, yeah, no, that was a great document written by some smart dudes, but then it never stays that. And
Right.
how do you
But
get
it's-
it to stay that? You
But
can't.
but the same argument's going to say to you when you have your anarcho-capitalism. You don't think that some of these capitalist companies are going to form together and find ways to break the rules and become corrupt and squish the liberties and the rights of the people that they serve. It's going to happen no matter what form the world is. I think the US Constitution specifically outlined, and there's one place where even our Supreme Court has used and pointed at as the how they get away with all of this, and that's um, Article 2, Section 8, where it lists out the powers of Congress. The I can't think of the words for it right now. The general welfare, the general welfare clause. Okay, the necessary and proper and general welfare. The necessary and proper clause, Article 2, Section 8. Madison, remember Madison being the guy who actually penned the Constitution, who was there for all of the arguments and debates and took all the notes from all of the delegates and wrote the Constitution. Argued when he was president and in the House as a member of the House of Representatives, he argued that the necessary and proper clause of Article 2, Section 8 was only to apply to the rest of Article 2, Section 8, which lists out the powers of Congress. But now, 245 years later, we look at that necessary and proper clause as we can do anything we think is necessary and proper. So at what point did we stop ignoring the guy who wrote the Constitution? His words and his arguments, and start going with but we're big bad government, we can do what we want.
What do you have any ideas of how to get back to that? Like, do you ever thought about like what we could
Hundreds and hundreds of elected officials who understand the Constitution, constitutional originalists, as I call them, people like Justice Alito and Justice Thomas, and the people that believe that the Constitution should be interpreted the way it was originally intended, and not whatever interpretation we want to put on it. And we can tell how it was originally intended to be interpreted. We have the writings of the Founding Fathers. We have the Federalist Papers. We have the statements and the letters and the arguments that these Founding Fathers made when they held elected office after the Constitution was made. So we know what the original intent was.
Okay, so my question, and this is to maybe possibly get a strike on my channel here, but fucking we're all in agreement that government's corrupt and can't be trusted. Okay, let's have a concerted effort to get thousands of people out there in the election who actually are going to make a change. If it's so corrupt, those elections just don't get won, if you catch my drift. You know what I'm saying?
20 people just held up the House of Representatives for how long to get a speaker elected?
3-4 days. 13 times or something.
20 people.
But he eventually got it, though. He won. He still got it.
But they also got a one vote motion where one person can stand up in the House and call for him to basically prove that he stays speaker. A vote of no confidence, it would be called in any other country, but we call it something, vacate the chair. One person can stand up in the House and say, I want a motion to vacate the chair. And they have to stop what they're doing and vote to see if he stays Speaker of the House. That's a pretty big win.
But
and
will it happen? It never nothing ever happens, though. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. That was 20 holdouts got that ginormous concession from this guy. Be polite. Imagine if that 20 holdouts was 150 or 200.
How do we get it to that, though? That's the problem, right? It's always just not enough people, and it's always just so fucking corrupt that no matter.
What do you do to make sure that the election runs smoothly?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Seriously, what do you personally do?
I truly wouldn't know. I mean, there would be. You would have to. This requires so many moving parts. I never thought this through. So I guess my first, if you give me a lot of money to handle this problem. I'm going to try to find
No,
the
no,
most.
not give you anything. What can you do tomorrow to make sure that your election in your town runs smoothly?
I mean, I don't know. How would I? I'm not counting the
Go down
votes.
to your election office and volunteer.
To do what, though? Count?
Be one of the people at the polling station on election day to make sure that they're following the rules and doing it right.
But let's say the machine's corrupted. How would you know that? You still
don't
funnel it through the machine, and the machine checks off Democrat.
That, but you can at least check the numbers to say, I know this many ballots went into the machine because that's how many ballots we did today. And you can compare that number to the machine at the end of the day and make sure they're at least not changing the total number of ballots that went in.
No, that's true. You
can make sure that when my town, you're in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You know what a Pennsylvania State Constable does?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the one thing a Pennsylvania State Constable is required to do by law? The one thing that they
you show up on election day and check it out.
Guard the polls.
Yeah.
Protect the polls. My town didn't elect a constable last municipal election. When I saw what a constable does, I went out and got myself appointed to be constable for my town. So I am a Pennsylvania State Constable.
Oh, that's actually awesome.
And the only thing I do with that badge and that job is I go to my 5 polling stations in a uniform with a gun and make sure that the peace is maintained on election day at the polling stations.
The cool thing about that job is technically you could go bring in people for warrants, but if you have a bunch of liberty-minded people doing that job, no one's getting brought in for warrants.
Well, it depends on what the warrant's for.
Well, yeah, for sure. But still, yeah,
I like how Peter asked the question knowing that he just really wanted to tell the story about
No,
constable.
my point is, when I did that research to find out what the constable does, I found out that in my county, there were 300 vacant elected jobs.
Yeah, there's so many. In fact, the Libertarian Party of PA, I guess we still use it. We call it the Malta maneuver based off the name of this guy. But pretty much it's like any uncontested election, just run it.
Yeah.
You'll win. But then my pushback on that is not that you shouldn't do it, because it's an easy win, right? If you have no one running and if someone just signs up, it's an automatic win. Sure, do it. My whole thing is don't put time and money into that because you're wasting resources that you don't really need them to. And the old guard was big on just putting money into a thing that didn't need to put money into. But no, that is, I think, a good idea to fill in empty spots and vacant spots, liberty-minded people for sure. But my also counter to that is this last election. Yeah, I mean, there's a documentary made, 2,000 Mules, whatever the fuck it was, right? Yeah, people being like, here's election fraud, here's all this, here's all that, and then nothing happened. That's my point. So it's you have people being like, look, here's evidence, and then the government's, again, so corrupt, they just go, cool.
But how many of the people at the local level can be the whistleblower, can stop the fraud, can make sure the rules at the local level are being followed? If there's 300 vacant positions, that means that somebody somewhere is getting his buddies to come in and fill those positions on election day. And if that buddy is part of the process, shall we say, if they're part of the corrupt organization, we just made it easier for them. If there's 300 empty, I can't assume that my county is all that special. If there's
there's a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
There's probably 300,000 vacant election day jobs across the country. Why?
There you go, unemployed. Get yourself something.
It's a 2-day-a-year job. Anybody can afford 2 days a year.
Yeah.
It sucks. It doesn't pay well. I get $85 to use my own car and drive around to 5 different polling stations all day long. And oh, by the way, I'm wearing $1,000 worth of equipment that I had to buy myself to earn that $85. It's you can't complain about election fraud and corruption and then know that you've got that many empty spots and not do something about it. I'm not saying you personally.
No, because I'm part of the Bucks County LP over here, and I'm involved, so I do help out and stuff like that. But no, it's just I don't think that's is what it's going to take to like stop the corruption. Is like
Got to start somewhere.
I think we got to go bigger. I just don't know what it is though.
If there's 5 people at the local polling station, right? You got the judge of elections, the minority party inspector, the majority party inspector, and 2 other. I don't know. I think it's 5 that are required at every one of those. If 3 of those 5 aren't elected, 3 of those 5 were the judge of elections who just drug somebody along with him that day. The process isn't being done right. And my judge of elections in my district is an out and out admitted socialist.
Awesome.
So if he's dragging his buddies to fill in empty spots, what's that doing for your liberty?
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere. And if filling these empty spots I think it's a start. It at least shows you're trying to do something, not sitting there and complain. I don't want to be a guy who sits behind this microphone for 2 hours a week and just complains. I want solutions.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. Kind of just made me think about the 2020 election. Was that the one Trump lost? It's been a while now.
That's right. Yeah.
With the voter fraud in all the lawsuits after the fact, and that was actually part of the problem was lawsuits after the fact. Here I'm out in California, and they had changed some voting things, and we jumped on it and filed suit and got it knocked down before the election. And then when you look at a lot of these lawsuits that didn't make it, they say, look, you should have brought these before this happened. Now the law went into effect, or they didn't. I know there was some things there in Pennsylvania, and then they bring the election happens, then they bring the suit, and it's too late. So that was a lot of problems that they had as well. And
here in Pennsylvania, Act 77, where the state legislature, in my opinion, unconstitutionally created out of whole cloth the mail-in ballot.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Pennsylvania state constitution says these are the reasons you're allowed to get a mail-in ballot, basically an absentee. Spells out the reasons. I had the Senate majority leader on my show, and I asked him I grilled him about Act 77. He said, we didn't change the Constitution. We created a new ballot class. I'm like, you can't do that, dumbass. Like, if the Constitution says this is how you vote, and that you don't get to just say, or this way, you have to add it to the Constitution. The problem with a lawsuit against that is you have the before or after argument that you were just making, is that if you can't sue somebody before injury, as they say. You don't have standing. You can't sue somebody because the steering wheel pulled off your car, but you weren't in an accident. The steering wheel pulls off your car and you get hurt, then you can sue. The same thing goes with all the stupid stuff. They changed this election law. Nobody was hurt. No damage was done. No election had been held yet. So you can't sue. But then after the fact, you get the judge that says, well, it's too late now. The election's already certified. You should have done this beforehand. So yeah, you're right. The legal system is messing with it too. How many of these judges said that they didn't even want to hear the cases and didn't want to see the evidence? Like, why do you get to make that decision to not even see evidence?
I'm trying to remember the legal term, and this is horrible because I'm an attorney, but you can actually ask, take it before the courts and ask them for a not judicial review, but some sort of judicial procurement of what this law is going to do. And matter of fact, the case just before the Supreme Court, I'm trying to remember what it was about. Oh, it was the gay cake one. That's exactly what it is. There has not been. It's the new gay cake one, right? She wants a gay website, web design. That's exactly
the web designer. That's right.
That there had not actually been, but she wanted to make sure to see, and so it went up all the way through the Supreme Court, and they made a ruling on that. So you can actually bring cases, and I think that's what we did here in California because they changed it and it wasn't constitutional. We asked for judicial review, and they came out and knocked it down. And so before the election, they could not use their new voting procedures that they were trying to have in place. And that's what I think a lot of them should have done. And they didn't even look at, and by the way, not seeing, without having to rehash a lot of this, looking at some of those court cases, they didn't necessarily look at the evidence because a lot of it was procedural stuff like my rights were being, taken to task and whatnot. So it wasn't necessarily going to look at the evidence involved. And now the Carrie Lake was a different situation though.
Yeah. Carrie Lake's seems to have her ducks in a row, so to speak, is in her documentation.
Yeah, but she didn't win, right?
I think she lost. I'm almost positive she lost. But but it still all goes back to everything's majorly corrupt. and we can't fucking
I think
barrel through it.
Yeah, look, the Supreme Court or the courts, this is a battle. You can take things all different ways. And I think right now the Supreme Court has kind of helped us, right? They're doing a few things of pushing back. We saw that with the OSHA ruling. Some of these other ones that we have, the knocking down Roe v. Wade. There's a few different things. So, and I guess, to Peter's point, that means you're concentrated and you're actually caring about what the elections are, because you got to get your guy in there who's then going to, I hate that the Supreme Court is so politicized that it makes a difference, that it's such a big deal as to who's president to pick these people.
Right.
But I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at, unfortunately.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why I feel like we're just constantly at a whim to these people who we really don't even elect. I don't even mean like a corruption elect way. I mean like we elect these senators and they're just lifetime. That's it. It's like that's the shit I mean. Like forget all the fucking corruption and stuff. There's basic shit like that. Like you talked about before. It's like we didn't vote on that. We didn't vote to keep senators to a term limit. They did, and then they voted to give themselves a raise.
And
it's like
what's the popularity of term limits is like what 85% of the population thinks that there should be term limits.
It has to be,
but they won't do it ever.
Right. So that's my point. How do you fucking stop that? Oh, you don't? Okay. And here we are again in another 2 years arguing the same dumb shit because all these corrupt. It's just I just feel like the monster just got too big and it's just so fucking corrupt. There's no getting Gizmo back to Gizmo. He's just monster Gizmo now. Like that's
Peter,
it.
what do you think of like national divorce?
Yeah, good question.
I don't know how it would work. I've actually heard good arguments on both sides as to whether or not the South should have been allowed to secede during the Civil War. There's a legal argument to be made for maintaining the Union or the states being allowed to secede. It makes perfect sense. The national divorce thing, like, what do you do? How? What are the logistics of that? Like, okay, here's the line. You've got 3 weeks to move. I'm in Pennsylvania, which is primarily a red state with blue pockets of population.
It's two blue pockets that determine it's Pittsburgh and Philly, and they determine every election.
Pittsburgh, Philly, Center County, where Penn State is, and that's where I live.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, you draw how do you?
I guess it'd be by state by state.
I mean, that's how it would initially start.
Yeah.
Right? Who knows? I mean, Oregon's trying to become part of Idaho, at least part of it.
Yeah. The eastern side of Oregon wants to. Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, there could be things like that, but I think the Civil War that we had, and Lincoln's unconstitutional approaches to things knocked out any chance for states to just easily. But it's happened before. I mean, there's been civil wars that have been. I'm a divorce attorney, and not everything is a war. So we could do a divorce. We just need a lot of divorce attorneys, maybe.
A lot.
A lot.
That sounds like a horrible prospect.
But what's better at this point? People, this country's so big. So would you not rather have a bunch of like-minded people forming their own place and a bunch of other like-minded people forming their own place?
It's kind of happening though, isn't it? I mean, the COVID thing is almost forcing people, the Floridas, Idahos, different places that are, I mean, it's, I'm in California, and they're leaving.
Yeah. New York and California lost seats, right? At the
yes.
Senate or whatever the fuck. Yeah.
Yes.
Pennsylvania did too, I think, actually, because we were
We gained one.
we gained one? I thought we lost one.
I thought so. We may have. I forget.
Because obviously outside of Philly and Pittsburgh, it was pretty fine. Like I never really during the whole COVID regime, the mask stuff, but like I know Bucks County at least the DA was like, we're not gonna absolutely prosecute anybody for not wearing a mask or any of that shit. So I know that much. But like it was whatever. But like if you went to Pittsburgh or Philly, it was like everywhere you went, it was COVID. But outside of that, it was like whatever. So I don't know. Yeah, the Oregon thing, the Florida thing, the Idaho thing, sure. But like Peter said, okay, is Philly going to want to leave the United States of America if the rest of Pennsylvania does? No.
Like you and I, what if, Philly votes or Pennsylvania votes to be freaking communist or something? What do we do? What do we do?
No, there's a lot of. I mean, I don't know. I still think it's better to be separate than to keep this bullshit going for sure. I just don't have the answer of how.
I think a lot of it goes back. It gets to education. We need to take back education of our children and young people in general, and everybody. To be honest, there's too many people out there that think that government is the answer.
Well, yeah.
and the only way that you can ever think that is you clearly did not learn American history, and you did not learn what our country is founded on. We are an anomaly as a country. The average constitutional republic lasts 50 years. We've lasted 244.
Yeah.
At least half of that, we were relatively free. Our country is basically the only country in the history of the world founded on the idea that government is there to protect the rights of the people. But we don't teach that anymore. And because we don't teach that anymore, nobody ever questions it.
There has to be some kind of a hunger for that. I get the teaching part too, but there's a lot of, when COVID happened, I was like, oh, it's going to be the libertarian moment. You're going to be able to show this.
Wrong.
And a lot of my people around here, they're just like, oh, flog me harder. And you're just like, okay.
I know. I happen to be in a Macy's closing sale, like a Macy's store, last day or last week of business closing sale, when the people with the big signs coming in selling, when Governor Wolf announced that we would be closed, everything was closing at midnight that night, and everything in Macy's went to 90% off. My wife has this really beautiful sapphire choker and her first set of real pearls and all
yeah. We're nuts.
And I went along with it the first time, because the first time, maybe this is a bad virus. We don't know. We'll give them a couple of days. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? By the end of that 2 weeks, we knew that only old people and unhealthy people were dying.
Yeah.
That they kept everything locked down. When Governor Wolf closed down the state the second time, I made public statements on all of my social media platforms and my radio show and everything. And I said, anybody within driving distance of me, if you're willing to violate these orders, I will come support your business. I don't care what your business is.
Mm-hmm.
So I ate in a whole bunch of restaurants I didn't normally eat in. I got a surprise tattoo from
cool.
from a tattoo shop that I happened to drive by, and we're like, hey, look, he looked open. Let's go.
That's cool.
There are more people that seem to be waking up now. There are more people that, you got Elon Musk is doing a pretty good job of bringing attention to liberty and corruption.
Yeah.
You got the 20 guys at the House of Representatives did a pretty good job of standing up and making a case.
We'll see how they do though.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes, long term.
Bated breath.
But I think more and more people are starting to wake up. I don't think it's massive wave of people yet, but I think it's starting.
You've got to have some sort of, so it's like the bailouts for the banks, right? When a bank's able to put out risk or actually get the reward, and then the risk is all mitigated by the government.
Yeah, that's
what's the point, right? And I almost think COVID was that way for a lot of people as well. Like, oh, okay, well, the government's just I don't, without getting into too personal stuff of what some clients and stuff I have, but they're all getting upset because baby daddy got all the COVID relief and that's my money. You know, it's just insane how much was coming at everybody during this time. Mm-hmm. And so their mentality is not to step back and go, oh, the government is imposing these onerous rules on me and making my business shut down because, oh, I'm getting money. I'm getting a PPP loan. I'm getting all these other freebies. And so that's kind of like, yeah, I did get it. Yeah. I couldn't help it. The money was coming into my accounts, you know, because you pay taxes or whatever. So I bought a gun. I bought a big generator. I built a chicken coop. I was doing all kinds of stuff with it. So
no, you guys are making a good point because I heard I was on a beach and I heard this chick one time talking to her friend and she was like,
oh yeah.
Why would I find a job when the government's paying me unemployment and a COVID thing? That's what she said verbatim. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Why would you?
Yeah.
Like, why would you? Why?
I never got that deal.
Yeah. I mean,
I worked the whole time. Like,
yeah, this chick's probably making
too,
like fucking $2,000-$3,000 a month off the government. And she's like, yeah, why would I go work? Like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. I don't blame you. Like, why would you? Why the fuck would you want to get up in the morning and go?
Business decision to me.
Yeah, it's just, but that's just someone I overheard one time. How many people are living that life? You know what I'm saying? Like the same exact thing. Like, oh, I'm getting unemployment and whatever from this, or whatever from this, or whatever from this, and this and this, or even daddy's giving me money. It's like all these people. You have like a whole generation of like just people who don't want to do shit, and they just look to government like like they're God. Like, this is always a thing I found interesting. The left will mock religion and God. Like, it's so fucking stupid. You worship a fucking guy in the sky, whatever. But then they'll turn around and suck the dick of government and do whatever the fucking government says. Like, it's their God. And they do not see that they're just worshiping an actual physical body entity instead of a faith thing, which is, I'd rather go with the faith thing.
Or they worship, you know, the climate
Bail.
change. Yeah. No, they worship a scientific theory, like, you know, climate change. We got to.
Well, yeah, that was with COVID. Like, trust the science. Even though my whole life I was told like science is like a changing, evolving thing, and it's never really set in stone. My whole life I was taught that until 2020. Right. Then it was no, this is actually set in stone forever.
Oh, by the way, don't look at the definition of scientific process. Right. I mean that the theory. You know, don't do that. By the way, back to the climate stuff. This morning, I heard a clip on the radio, and it was Al Gore. He's out there talking, you know, wherever the climate people are right now, and he literally said the ocean's boiling. Right? He's talking about right now, and I'm like, who boils fish? But evidently we do. I don't know.
Dude, there's articles from the 80s and like being like, Miami will be underwater by 1998 if we don't stop what we're doing, and we didn't stop what we're doing, and Miami's fine.
No, in the 70s it was, you know, there's going to be an ice age, and then in the 80s it was acid rain, and in the 90s it was, you know, whatever. I don't understand how anybody still believes any of them anymore.
No,
like, you can't be wrong that many times and then just change the goalpost and have any credibility, but yet somehow they still do.
Peter, though, the problem is even the COVID stuff, those people that were so wrong, and now they're the Dr. Wen, I know Dave Smith just was showing clips, and she's kind of coming out. She's so wrong, but now she's like, oh, things change. It's like, oh my God. So that's just in a few years, Peter, and you're talking about like 30, 40. We can't remember that.
Nobody
that's your education point.
Can't remember. I don't understand. Let's Dr. Fauci. 6 months before any of us had ever heard of COVID, Dr. Anthony Fauci was co-author of a study or a report or something that basically said that masks don't do anything for respiratory viruses.
I have a clip of him explicitly saying not to buy masks on my phone right now.
Right. But he was lying when he said that. Remember,
of course.
He didn't want you to run out and buy a mask because they needed them for the doctors.
Right.
Even though, like I said, 6 months before anybody ever heard of this thing, he said that masks don't do anything for respiratory viruses. But if you say that in public, you're a conspiracy theorist left nut job, and you're trying to kill grandma. And how dare you question science?
This was something, and I think we're talking about the elites too much and the people of power. They know what they're doing. Right. Our problem is our fellow friends and family who are so fucking stupid. Like, I was talking to my friend Matt, fellow comic. I love Matt to death, but liberal guy, wife's pretty liberal. And we were just talking about the mask shit. I was like, yeah, mask stuff was fucking dumb, right? And he was like, well, it helped. I went, nah, it didn't. No. And then he's like, no, it did. He's like, I'm like, Matt, I can send you studies that say they don't, but you're just going to dismiss them, right? But I'm like, I'm just going to forget that. How about this? This is a vape. Tell me this, Matt. Are vape particles bigger or smaller than a microscopic virus? And he was like, smaller. A vape's bigger. I was like, right. Now, if I wear a mask, I could vape through my fucking mask. He's like, yeah. I go, that's all I should have to say if you don't understand what I'm getting at. He's like, no, I don't understand. I go, if I could vape through my mask and those are bigger particles, then why would microscopic little ones stop? Why would that stop it from the mask? He's like, well, there's no answer. They just keep repeating what they're told. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is just a pointless conversation I'm having? Okay. And then I did send him articles, by the way, about mask stuff. He's like, well, those are like libertarian, backed articles. I was like, all right, man, we're done here. And they weren't, by the way. One out of 4. It just doesn't matter.
Look at Dr. Peter McCullough, who prior to COVID was the most published cardiologist in the history of the world.
Yep.
He was the top of the game, has written more articles and than any other cardiologist ever. But he questioned COVID, and now they're threatening to take his license away.
Yeah. Adam, you on the mask, it's literally their rosary. I mean, that's kind of what it ended up turning into. Yeah. It's funny when you talk about Fauci lying about the mask. He did it to save, or so we had more for the doctors. But if it is as deadly and the masks save you like they now claim, then he was willing to sacrifice
millions,
hundreds, if not millions of people just for a few doctors, which I mean, it's crazy.
None of it makes sense. But this is what I'm saying. I feel like everything we're saying is very much like, that makes sense. But then I talk to my dumb liberal friends, and they're just like, rah, 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 rah. And you're just like, hey, man, I don't know how else to lay this out to you in like a normal way. And also the thing with them, too, is like, if I just go, hey, masks don't work, their immediate reaction is anger and yelling. There's no like, oh, why did you say that? That's never, I'm telling you right now, that's not a thing I ever encounter. So it's like, I'm at the point where I don't even talk about this shit with because I'm like world of comedy, and I'm just surrounded by liberals. That's just what it is, right? Very few conservative libertarians in the world of comedy, okay? And I'm friends with all of them. The ones that are, I'm friends with all. Most of them are fucking left leaning. So I'm done. I'm done with. I don't talk about it. I don't mention it. I don't bring it up at shows and green rooms. But I'll tell you who does mention it: those motherfuckers, and they will come out and find me on purpose to yell at me, even though I'm not talking about it. Because they just want to put their point. That's what I'm saying. They're so hell-bent on their point being pushed. I could be in a green room at a comedy show, an hour into the comedy show, having a great time, and someone's like, why do you hate black people? Or whatever the fuck, is like, I'm a libertarian. I'm like, why are you a literal Nazi? And I'm like, come on, dude, I don't even want to talk about this shit. I want to talk about dick jokes and fucking why giraffes are stupid. Not like the economy and like your dumb, wrong thoughts on how the world works. Here's the other thing, too. None of them read a fucking book about any of this we're talking about. Ever. No one ever does research. They don't read a book. They don't read articles. They just go, someone told me this, and I'm just going to repeat that shit back right to your fucking face like a parrot. It's mind-numbing, dude. I'm just over it all. I just wash my hands of it. I'm done with it. For sure.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Oh, no. What's happening to your camera?
Books.
Oh, books. Yes. Books. Yes, lots of books. Yeah, books. It's all, just read one thing. Like the best is the economics argument. People start like all these communists about, like this money and this, you got to do this. I go, how many books do you read about economics? Like 0. Okay, cool. What are we doing here? What are we doing? I don't know. It's like a fucking circle. I feel like a never-ending circle.
Yeah.
Apparently, I messed up my camera though.
I don't know. The books are talking. Peter is it?
He's there. I heard him, but I think his camera's fucked.
Yeah, my camera froze now. Hey, I just heard my wife come home too, so I should probably.
No, that's cool. We can wrap it up. Tyler, everybody, tell everybody where they can find you and your podcast and all your social media stuff.
Yeah, the Libertarian Podcast Review. We review podcasts, mostly libertarian bent stuff. Maybe we'll check out Peter's stuff. Tyler Janke, TylerJanke on Twitter. Tune in tomorrow. I'm going to break down this book called The Respondent. It's this guy, Greg Ellis, had a horrible situation in family law in California, and I immediately didn't believe him. And now he's going to push. He's going to push something that I believe in, which is the court systems suck and all this, and it's great. And he's hated by the Amber Heard types. I'm totally there, but I feel he's not telling the truth, which then is disingenuous for his kind of point of view. So check us out, because Andy and I are going to go over the first 70 or so pages of the book, and then I found his court documents online too. So check that out.
Very cool. Peter, where we find you and your great show?
The show is live Thursday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern time on republicbroadcasting.org. Or if you like watching the video, you know, like the long gray-haired beard guy, you can check that out at liberty-lighthouse.com, where you can also find all of my books and everything else. But if you want to have some fun, I have another website. I'm running a fake campaign for president. It's Peter, the number 4, Peter4president.com.
Perfect. Guys, go to that. Support them. Tyler, you're the best. I love you, as always. Peter, thank you for coming on. This was fun. We got to get you back on and maybe a few months down the road to keep this up, keep figuring out what makes our party so great and different from the other ones. Everybody else, you guys know where I'm at. I'll talk to you guys off air. I'll say goodbye to you guys off air. Everybody, thanks for tuning into the Porcupine. Next week, we'll figure out what we're doing, as always. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Find Adam on social media, Twitter and IG @Adam Nutter, or Facebook and TikTok @Adam Nutter Comedy. And for podcasts and merch, check out www.droptent.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
This has been a Drop Tent Media Production.